Well, hello everyone. Good morning. I hope you're all doing well today. It's snowing this morning. It's super pretty. My name is Easy Dang. I go by Amber. I'm from Group 3, and we have two other members in this group. We're gonna have them introduce themselves real quick right here.
Hi, I'm Caroline Colbert.
And hi, I'm Roy Sessions. We'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ning Ma for her gracious support of us and her expert help.
Yes. And for this project, our focus is to pay attention to the ordinary people's life and starts there. We're going to focus on China's Northeast and America's Rust Belt region. And for now, we're going to have my teammate Caroline to start with more details about the project.
All right, so I'll start by just giving a roadmap for our presentation. We're going to start by stating our solution and discussing its relevance. And then we'll identify some challenges to the current US-China relationship. And this will be followed by details about the content of our workshop, and then feasibility, and finally our desired outcomes. So our solution is a model of using a lecture or a workshop focused on two comparable regions from the US and China, with the goal of increasing familiarity and ultimately positive perceptions between the populations of both regions. In our presentation today, we're going to use China's Northeast, which you might hear us also refer to as Dongbei, and America's Rust Belt as two examples of comparable regions. But our solution isn't about these two regions so much as it is about how to highlight and identify common life experiences from ordinary people from different regions like this. We really want to focus on ordinary people and kind of stay removed from pop culture and national identities, because we think this creates the best environment for people from the two countries to develop authentic senses of connection with people from the opposite regions. We're confident that this approach can increase familiarity and understanding between ordinary people. We also hope that by increasing positive social perceptions in the general population, we'll also be able to increase positive political outcomes, because the feelings and views of normal people can shape politics. With that, I'll pass it on to Royce.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline. So I'm just going to take a few moments here to discuss some of the challenges that Sino-American engagement currently face. And it almost goes without saying that right now we're seeing an increasingly negative perception of the United States in China and of China in the United States. Here on the left, I have some information that was published by the Pew Research Center within the last year or two. They gave out a survey to, I believe, largely American participants, and these American participants were asked who they found to be at fault when it came to the spread of COVID-19, as well as some other China-related questions. This question that I wanted to highlight was how these participants viewed China. Did they view it as a competitor, an enemy, or as a partner? And while there has been some change over the last 8 years from the first time a similar study was done, very little of that change is all that positive. Here we can see 57% of participants saw China as a competitor, while an increased number of participants, up to 26%, saw China as an overt enemy to the United States. Although this isn't a uniquely American perception, here on the right, I have a tweet, or a screenshot of a tweet from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman, maybe infamous spokesman, Zhao Lijian, who's highlighting that on the one hand, we can see Chinese military aircraft sending emergency supplies to Tonga, while the US is sending arms to Ukraine. And while this might highlight an almost imperfect perception of global politics, it is no less unhelpful, or it's extremely helpful, I guess, in helping to illustrate the fact that there is this juxtaposition that's occurring where you're seeing an increasingly, or at least in China, you're seeing perceptions of an increasingly militant United States and the West, while China is being perceived, at least domestically, as this sort of international benign entity. But our challenges don't stop there. There's also an issue with representation. And I think it's fair to say within both the United States and China, there's an issue when it comes to understanding regarding what an average citizen's life looks like, what the average citizen in general is going through, what they look like. And this is especially prevalent in media. At least here in the United States, really the last major portrayal of an ordinary Chinese-speaking individual was almost 30 years ago with Zhang Yimou's film To Live or Huozhe, in which Ge You masterfully played Fu Gui. And the character of Fu Gui, while he might be an ordinary Chinese-speaking individual, he isn't some special politician, nor is he a prince. His whole life, at least as it's set in the movie and in the short novel by Yu Hua, takes place during China's Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, which, as we stand now, is somewhat chronologically removed from where we are. And some people might point to a more recent example of Crazy Rich Asians, and we can't denigrate the effect Crazy Rich Asians had when it came to the representation of Chinese-speaking individuals, at least here in Hollywood. But we can't say this film is representative of the average individual. Whether we like it or not, the average Chinese speaker is not a millionaire Henry Golding playing mahjong. This film's, I guess, main cast, by and large, are portraying these Singaporean glitterati. They aren't these blue-collar workers, and they certainly aren't ordinary. Average GDP per capita in China hangs around 12 to 13,000 US dollars. This is a far cry from the sort of luxurious lifestyle we're meant to take in with Crazy Rich Asians. Although this isn't to say there aren't films that could offer a more mundane and ordinary experience. Recently, films like Hi Mom were extremely successful in China. This is actually the third highest grossing non-English language film of all time. It grossed $822 million at the box office. Yet, importantly, only about $1 million of that 822 million came from international markets. The vast majority of that money was domestic. And as far as I can tell with information from Box Office Mojo, which tracks some box office stats, the film really wasn't even shown, if at all, in the United States. And so with that, let's get to something a bit happier. Let's talk about our regional focus, which is what we're using to ground this project. This is what we're hoping will differentiate this project from other workshops. And so as Caroline and Amber both mentioned, we're looking at China's Dongbei, northeastern region, and the American Midwest Rust Belt. And why would we do this? These regions, by and large, aren't the sort of sexy centers of national pop culture. In many cases, they sort of fall outside of that hearth of national culture. And we think by focusing on these maybe less, I don't know, for lack of a better term, sexy regions in terms of comparison, we're hoping to focus on more ordinary lives. These regions are peopled by individuals who live relatively mundane lives. They're not influencers, they're not millionaires by and large, and many of them aren't politicians. In addition to that, both these regions give us a natural point of comparison. They have similar climates. As we all know, here in Minnesota, it's frightfully cold right now. And in China's Dongbei, with that humid continental climate also being present, we're going to see colder winters as well. So another point of comparison. And then finally, these two regions, for better or for worse, share somewhat similar histories in terms of former industrial importance and sort of economic decline in recent years. Let's talk about that real quick. So regional focus, being grounded in these two regions will necessitate a conversation of their histories, which were shared to a point, and their current economic states. So both these regions, as I already mentioned, were formerly areas of industrial importance. In China's Dongbei, we see heavy industry being paramount to both Japan's occupation and invasion of Manchuria. This was a Japanese heavy industry center, whereas here in the American Midwest, especially in the Rust Belt, we see the center of American steel manufacturing and automobile manufacturing in states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, respectively. And I guess with the advent of our globalized economy and comparative advantage being all the rage, some of these regions have been hit quite hard economically. And now we're seeing a sort of middling at best economic performance. Here on the bottom left, I have some information on Chinese household disposable income in real 2015 per capita UN. Yeah, so here we have our three provinces that make up the Dongbei region. We have Liaoning, ranked 8th out of China's 31 provinces, Longjiang, ranked 15th, and finally, Jilin at 16th out of China's 31 provinces. In the Rust Belt, you see some similar middling economic performance with states like Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania. They hang around the high 30s, early 40s when it comes to being ranked by a similar measure out of America's 50 states. But enough of that, let's get to our solution.
Okay, so now we'll talk about the specific structure and content of our workshop. We plan for it to be 2 hours long, starting with a discussion of cultural experiences relevant to daily life. So focusing on culture that's relevant to normal local people from these regions, and not so much on history lessons. The culture section will also be enhanced with some samples of food from both regions. And then in the second part of the workshop, we'll illustrate daily experiences of normal life with an emphasis on practical challenges to just daily life. And this will be aided by documentary viewing, since none of us is an expert on this topic or these experiences from these regions. So with that, I'll hand it over to Amber.
Yep. So I'm going to talk about the cultural aspect of our project. So when we think about what brings people together, culture is for sure playing a major role here. And one of the most influential part of culture is food. So during our workshop, there's going to be a break session for food. And just as Royce also mentioned previously, the two regions are having really similar climates, which made us curious about whether they would have similar culture based on that climate. And the answer is yes. Because living in cold places like Dongbei, people need more energy and calories to stay warm and energetic for winter. So Dongbei Tieguodun is for sure the go-to option for Dongbei people's daily choice of food during winter. And it's shown on the upper right corner on the slide. And in Tieguodun, there's going to be different types of proteins and vegetables. And as we could all sort of see from the picture, there are pancakes made out of corn that sticks to the pot. You can see around the proteins. And in Dongbei, people like to be together with family and friends to share this type of food and bring more than just physical energies. It also brings people's spirit together during the taste of such food. And then when we think about what type of food could represent Rust Belt without a casserole, it's also this kind of hot dish that contains many veggies and proteins that keeps people energetic, just like Tieguodun. Yeah, and we're also planning to introduce one of the holiday special activity from Dongbei, that is Niuyangge. Niuyangge is a dance that people do in special holidays like Chinese New Year. And if we're in Dongbei during Chinese New Year, we'll be able to see the Niuyangge parade on the street, as you can also see from the slide. People were all wearing red and having a fan with them and do the dance all together, bring some joy and fun to everyone. And Niuyangge is also one of the things we could just see in daily life as well. In the community, on the square, you can sometimes see a group of people doing Niuyangge together just to have some fun and work out. So we hope to bring Niuyangge to the audience as well, to have us all to try Niuyangge together. It's going to be easy. There's only 4 moves together, no more than that. And I think most people could learn that. It's only 4 moves. And we really just hope to bring joy to our audience at the same time to learn about the cultures. And yeah, and that is all I have for cultural aspect for our project. And we're gonna have Royce to talk about more for the societal aspect.
Yep, so I guess economics major I have to ground things a little more dismally. So I mentioned previously that in both the Dongbei and Rust Belt, we have these former centers of industrial importance. And I think it's important to understand that aspect of these regions because it'll help inform current understandings of both of them. And for better or for worse, I am not the prototypical Rust Belt worker. I am not a blue collar worker, nor am I a Dongbei automotive worker. But luckily, there are some documentaries which we can show clips of, which will help illustrate our point. Netflix, within the last few years, and to great acclaim, released American Factory, 美国工厂. which helped to illustrate a Chinese glass company's attempt at opening a factory here in Michigan. And that will help highlight the sort of differences in Chinese and American blue-collar culture and work life. In addition to that, we've identified Wangbing's west of the tracks, TSU2, which, while 9 hours in length, helps illustrate the sort of impact that a loss of industrial importance has and had on the city of Shenyang. And again, we'll only show clips from that. Nobody has time to watch all 9 hours in a workshop setting. But by showing these documentaries, by focusing on this blue collar life, we're hoping to identify a very clear string of commonality. Whether or not we like it, a blue collar worker in the Dongbei and in the Rust Belt together have much more common than either one of them would ever have with one of those Singaporean millionaires we saw in Crazy Rich Asians. People are drawn to what they're familiar with. And so we're hoping by helping to identify this string of commonality, we can help to foster some authentic cultural connection and understanding by contextualizing it in a sort of blue collar environment where industry at one time was, and to a certain extent still is, paramount.
Okay, so the main challenges to making this workshop feasible are venue, interest, and cost. So imagining this workshop being run on campus, the U has plenty of space to host an event. So if a student group wanted to get a space, it would be free. Otherwise, we found some suitable spaces for $150 or less. In terms of interest, we definitely think there'd be interest from students in the flagship program or cultural clubs, such as the Chinese American Student Association and the Chinese Students and Scholars Association. And there would definitely likely be interest in the wider university community as well. But we think that flagship students in particular could help run the workshop. In terms of food cost, for $12 per person, it would be $360 for 30 people. That's just an estimate of attendance based on similar events that we've been to. And since we're serving something like hot dish, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper than $12 per person. So overall, this event would be a couple $100s. And then if for some reason we wanted to change the menu, there's lots of Chinese restaurants in the area, so we could get a competitive price and we'd have a lot of options. And then I also wanted to note that Minneapolis's sister city in China is Harbin, which is in China's northeast. So they would be a great partner to host this workshop in China.
Yep.
1 minute warning.
Okay. So when we talk about the impact, we believe the impact of this workshop is essentially to bring people together and to learn about the similarities between the two cultures. It might not be influential enough to make China and USA become good friends in the next day, but we do hope to help people understand that people on the other side of the world, they are not so different from us here. They're also just living in their life as we are, but under different culture and look a little bit different. We all love to eat warm foods during the cold days. We all like to gather together with one we love to spend some time. And the activities might be different, but the purpose is always the same, is just to connect. And at the end of the day, we're just ordinary people. So through this workshop specifically, we hope to develop more positive attitudes to people when thinking about the other nation and culture. So through the culture workshop and lectures, we hope that there will be deeper understanding of each other's, and this might also help to take away some of the stereotypes about certain nation or culture. And simply in telling the stories and looking for similarities between the two cultures, we are building a virtual bridge between China and USA.